This is a Kirkendall Barrett presentation, darling. Well, hello everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. Another day of a lifetime of Hallmark. I am Les Kirkendall Barrett. Hello, Jason Bowers.
Hello, Les Kirkendall Barrett.
And hello, Kurt Fitzpatrick.
Hello, Les Kirkendall Barrett, and hello, Jason Bowers.
We take movies from both Lifetime and the Hallmark Channel and try to make sense of them.
We're not very successful, though, because they don't often make sense, but they are fun to watch.
And we go down all kinds of rabbit holes. We talk about Angelian quite a bit. We talk about the show Enos.
June Squibb. We are team June Squibb all the way.
And we have Black China news every single episode.
So with that in mind, why don't you listen to a lifetime of Hallmark? You can listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Well, hello everybody. This is Les, and I love soaps. And I'm back. I had a lot going on. I adopted a kid. I was in a show. I had some other things going on. So I basically took the summer off. But I'm back, everybody. And I'm here to talk about our favorite soaps, both in the US and the UK. So I am starting the second week of September. So fasten your seatbelts because we've got a lot of soap-tastic stuff to talk about. So remember, this is Les, and I love soaps, and you can find me anywhere that you can get podcasts. See ya! Well, hello, everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. It is time for another episode of the Reality Reading Rainbow, where we talk about books written by your favorite reality stars, primarily those on Bravo, and try to make sense of them. I am one of your hosts, Les Kirkendall Barrett. Hello, and let me introduce you to your other host, Victoria Wood. Hello, Victoria.
Hi, Les. It's so good to be back. Missed last week, but I'm so thrilled. We're here to talk all things Make It Nice. I'm loving this book.
Seriously, and it gets deeper and deeper and better and better. Like, seriously, like now I'm like, I need her back on screen.
I do.
I do. Back on the show.
I think this book was just like the best thing that's ever happened for her. It's beautiful, not just her story, but just the way it's organized, the way it's written. It flows. It keeps me turning the page. I mean, again, I'm forcing myself to stop reading so I can give the podcast, my real, true, authentic, immediate reactions. It's so good. Dorinda has a winner with this one. She has a winner.
And I love how we're both doing it. You're reading it from the book. I'm listening to it on Audible. So we've got like both experiences.
How's the audio though? How's the audio?
It's good. It's good. It's her doing it. And she's very engaging, actually.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
As opposed to Erica Jane. Because I listened to Erica Jane's audiobook too, and her attitude, her voice came off like she was doing you a favor by reading it for you. Whereas Dorinda was more conversational. She was like, it was just like she was enjoying what she was doing as she was doing it.
Here's the funny part, right? Dorinda's book, I'm recommending it to folks who don't even watch Housewives, okay? You really don't need to know her. You don't need to have the housewife context. You just need to receive this book as someone sharing their story. And their tidbits you can take away, just life. I think Dorinda, we just got done with Ebony, and Ebony was giving us all this advice, for life when it comes to business and decorum and just your appearance. I think Dorinda is also giving me university of life, life experiences, travel experiences, expat experiences, being a new mom experiences, being remarried, blended families, and her own personal ambition, and I think her book's relatable. It's so good.
And you just said something when you talked about expat experiences, because I think that's why I grew up as an expat. So, I grew up mostly in Spain. So I can definitely relate to that on that level, when she's talking about learning a new culture and when she's talking about making friends and all that stuff. And after reading, because I just finished it right before I popped on, I have the sudden urge to entertain.
Me too.
I want to.
I love the part when she shared, it was in chapter 4, and I know you covered it, her going to etiquette school and learning all these things. And we learn later on how much it helps her. So I too want to entertain. It's so interesting. Again, I think Dorinda's story is super inspiring.
So when we last left Dorinda, she had just, narrowly prevented herself from being killed by a serial killer, the
Yes.
Wandsworth killer.
Yes.
And she went into labor and she had Hannah. And so we start off this chapter with her giving birth, the birth of Hannah, and how it changed her as a person.
Absolutely. And again, it's just so funny when housewife life intersects real life, because I think most folks, especially in the UK, they know the Wandsworth killer. You've heard it. You might not know the story, but you've heard it. And I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but in the book, Dorinda has an interaction with this killer, not just once, not twice, but she's had consistent interaction. And she says during class, Scotland Yard shows up and arrests this person. So I'm not going to tell you how or why, but just the fact that Dorinda had this interaction is wild to me. And because you're listening on audio, Les, I just want to tell listeners, chapter 4, which, what's the name? Chapter 4, which is entitled Dorinda Lynch, that you covered last week, that also has the Wandsworth killer in it. There's some beautiful Dorinda photos in here.
Oh,
beautiful.
Oh.
That's in the chapter 4. So we have a baby picture with Dorinda from 1965, when her mom brought her sister home from the hospital in 66, her first communion with her family in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Her riding bikes, her moving to New York, her wedding with Ralph Lynch himself, some more wedding photos when she was pregnant with Hannah in London in 93, when she gave birth, when Hannah was the baby, this is what, in 94, they were in Nice. Meeting Santa at Harrods. I mean, it's just, her baptism, coming back to the States. We even see, whose wedding is this now? Richard's wedding. Yeah.
wait, so the picture of Richard marrying the other. It was her wedding with Richard. Because did she have any pictures? Okay, because I thought for a second I got the names jumbled up because it's Ralph.
I know.
So
Ralph was the first husband. I just lost it a second too. I had to go look back. So Ralph was the first husband. She has wedding photos with him. Then she also has wedding photos with Richard. And she had beautiful weddings both times around. I mean, you even see pictures with Dorinda when she met Hillary Clinton at a fundraiser she hosted at her townhome. Richard and Hannah, her mom, when she bought Bluestone Manor, some interiors from that. Housewives, she has some housewife photos in here as well. Her mom and dad as early as 2019. And her Christmas 2020. So Dorinda gives us tons of photos, you guys. And I think that's my favorite part of just reading anyone's memoir or biography, is seeing the photos, and Dorinda does not disappoint.
Wow. So she talks about the fact that when she gave birth, she was not prepared for the changes. And so being a mother, how did you relate to this part?
I think it was super relatable, but I'm even going back to when she was pregnant. You know, you have an idea of how you're going to be when you're pregnant. Dorinda was very thin, in shape, but she wasn't that, you know, model perfect mom in terms of her figure. She also talks about just eating everything in sight. And then she also goes on and talk about just how she felt as a new mom. And in a weird way, I could relate to that, because folks you always have an idea, you're always being told how motherhood or parenthood is going to be. And then you get there and it's not that. Now, the one thing Dorinda had that I didn't have was just, she had this best friend feeling when Hannah was born. You know, she for her, she knew Hannah was it. Hannah was going to be the center of her world. I never felt that. I know it sounds horrible to say, but you know, I didn't. It took time, because for me, it was just, your whole life revolves around this human, and you do get resentful sometimes. And I don't think folks are honest about that. Instead, they share like this unconditional love situation. And it's true, you will go to war for your child. But at the same time, you know, I like the fact that Dorinda said she was in over her head. And I appreciated that, because I'm so sick and tired of everyone saying, oh, it was perfect, these are the best days of my life. And to me, I got a very realistic piece with Dorinda. But in chapter 5, it's entitled "And Then She Looked at Me," she also shares about Hannah having newborn illnesses.
Right.
Well.
And major illnesses.
Absolutely. And you know, for anyone out there, if you've ever had a preemie, or you know, your child has any newborn complications and they're in hospital for some time, you're going to understand that. And that was something I could relate to, with having a child in a NICU for like 6 to 8 weeks. You get paranoid that, well, okay, this baby, in my case, I was worried this baby isn't going to latch on for breastfeeding. This baby is going to miss out on bonding time and all these things. And reading Dorinda's experience, because her daughter had sleep apnea, and reading about how she physically reacted, just even having her baby stay overnight. I mean, that was super relatable. Her not having a wink of sleep until her own mother came over to care for Hannah. That was super relatable, because I know that having your mom there, it's just like, it's the trust. You know, you could have all the hired help in the world, you're just not going to feel that comfortable. So seeing and hearing that for Dorinda, it was the same thing. Her first solid night's sleep since Hannah was born and then diagnosed was when her mom arrived. And again, I'm like, this woman is so human. Even though, you know, she's crazy rich and she has all these resources, she's just so human. And I loved it.
And then she made a new friend who turned out to be her friend, you know, her new friend Caroline, who turned out to be Lady McTaggart.
I know, that was wild. Wasn't she the lady, you know, Dorinda had to wait until she was formally invited over to I think it was tea time or something. But it's just the formalities was crazy. And she was so excited when she got her letter. You know, here's a quote. She was like, she had introduced herself as Caroline, but the name on the card was something different, Lady McTaggart. It felt like I had just been informed that the white horse I had met was in fact a unicorn. It was just so batshit funny. And then she goes on to say she couldn't just call her back and say, oh yeah, I'm coming. you know, she had to wait. She had to do, you know, the proper thing, which
She had to make stationery. Yeah.
get stationery bought, get stationery made, and, you know, respond in kind. And I know it seems super formal and uptight, but you know what, Les? I miss that. I'm the person, okay? Let me give or make sure I'm being accurate. So it's October 12th.
Right.
I've started writing Christmas cards.
Get out.
No, I swear, I have a box of Christmas cards, right? No, I don't have stationery made, you guys. I'm not that bougie, but I order cards, not your Hallmark or anything. I find makers online who make their cards, and I found this one person. Her website is Party of One Paper, I think. I know it's not sponsored. I paid for it, but they're beautiful cards, and she has great Christmas cards. I ordered a bunch, and I'm writing, signing, because I do handwrite cards still. I have a seal with my last name and initial, my
Oh
double.
gosh. Okay, you are hardcore.
So I'm hardcore, but see, that's the thing. I know damn well if I wait till November, I'm going to be in over my head. So every September, I start writing and signing Christmas cards. So I know for some it might feel like, oh, it's a bit much. But that's what I miss. I do miss formalities in terms of invites. I know people are saving money. I know they're saving paper, trying to save the environment, but you can get stuff that you can reuse, recycle, whatever, or just keep. I love cards. So,
well, and you know what? I got to tell you, with the paper invites, that I do wish would happen more, because with the advent of Facebook, people now do their invites on Facebook, but it's easy to miss a Facebook invite.
yeah.
You know, I've had friends like, you know, hey, you coming to my party? Oh, I didn't know about your party. Oh, well, I sent you a Facebook invite, and then I go back and the invite has been there for weeks, but I just missed it.
I don't, for me, it's just super impersonal. I think, look, okay, again, not being bougie, but it's very impersonal. It's very lazy. It's very, very lazy, because now Facebook reminds us of someone's birthday. No one has a date book anymore.
I do.
Hallelujah. You know, folks don't do, what do you call it, those things anymore? People don't send birthday cards or Christmas. They're all digital. Everything's digital. So in my mind, it's like why I love books. Okay. I do listen to audio, you guys, and I do have ebooks, and I use my local library for that a lot. Okay. I do. However, nothing for me beats the feel of a book, the paper. Right. I'll smell it. I'm that weird. So it's the same thing with stationery and cards. So I know, you know, Dorinda's daughter's probably like, what now? 30 or late 20s or something, you know, however old she is. But with that in mind, I know, you know, Dorinda was doing this in the early 90s. She's still writing cards and so on. So I still think it's nice. And, you know, I think to this day, if Dorinda's having an event, an intimate event, I think she would still follow her protocol and, you know, send out invites on nice stationery and cards. And wait, weren't we watching something on Housewives? Was it Karen or someone who had someone deliver?
Yes, it was Karen. It was Karen Huger on Real Housewives of Potomac.
See, hers is a memoir I'd read. I would love
totally.
I'd love to read it and see what Karen's protocol is for an event. But yeah, I think letter writing is a lost art. I think physical invites now, when you do get them, you know, it's just super special. So yeah, back to Dorinda. She got her stationery and she responded, and Dorinda acknowledged that, you know what, it was going to take time to be friends with this woman. This isn't a fast friendship. You know, they're very guarded folks. And eventually, you know, they became good girlfriends. She became the girl down the street that she could call on. And what was so heartwarming for me is Dorinda is still friends with this woman to this day. right? She is still friends with these folks. So say what you want about her on television, you know, she clearly has people in her life that care about her, that she's still friends with. And what I loved about her too, and I know you covered this last week, is Dorinda is friends with everyone.
Yeah.
The person at the coffee shop, the meat shop, you know, you could be a banker, designer, moms. She really don't care. You know, Dorinda's just your everyday average girl. And I loved it.
And you know what? I just thought about something. And I don't want to derail the podcast, but after reading this, I came to a little understanding. So remember a couple of seasons ago when Dorinda, they were at some events and Dorinda turned to the Black person and asked, "Do you work here?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do.
Right. But it's not even a but. Even though she fucked up doing that.
Yeah, she did.
She did fuck up. But I remember that she was like, at least when she asked, she was like, nice.
Well, look, you know, I'm gonna be real. Dorinda fucked up there, but I also thought about every second I've made that mistake.
I have.
Because listen, Dorinda fucked up, but I know the word grace is overused, but I will give her grace because she didn't say it in a super condescending kind of way. And that's the only reason why. So it wasn't really like with disdain, but she still fucked up. Okay, folks, make no mistake.
And that's where I was getting it. Like she was, because, and I've made it, hey, don't be wearing a red shirt at Target when I'm around because I will ask you,
Did you see Erica Jane at Target?
Oh God.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Oh God. I am so ready for tomorrow.
Oh my God. Same.
I'm posting this like the day of, like I'm posting it tonight. I'm so excited about the Beverly Hills reunion tomorrow. And I want Garcelle to light Dorit's ass up.
I think the person I have zero tolerance for is Dorit. It's just Dorit, no. Yeah. No. That's all I'm gonna say. No, Dorit, no.
Right. No. I even like PK now.
See, that's the thing. PK, who is an asshole still, who's still, a piece of shit, was more likable than Dorit. I mean, how does that happen? But here we are. But yeah, I am looking forward to the reunion. Really excited to see how that goes. But yeah, when you mentioned Target, I just had to ask you if you saw Erica Jane. Apparently, that's where she frequents.
You know what? I bet Dorinda would go to Target.
Of course, Dorinda would go to Target for sure. I know that for a fact. She really would. And that's just like a perfect segue because, after Hannah was born, after Hannah was born and, her friend with Lady McTaggart, she also mentions that her husband, Ralph, his family lived in Scotland. They live outside of Glasgow. Shout out all Glaswegians. I love
Is that when you call someone from Glasgow a Glaswegian?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay.
I love them. No, I do. I know a lot of folks love Edinburgh just for the castle and, the arts and culture and all the bookstores and everything there. I love Glasgow. I do.
Well,
I do.
Let me tell you, Edinburgh has left a bad taste in my mouth. Because of their airport, because we were going, because for those of you who don't know, my husband is British, and so we go to the UK a lot. Well, pre-COVID. And so this one time we were going to the UK and we had a layover in Scotland, in Edinburgh. And it was supposed to be a 1 hour layover, which turned into like a 10-hour layover. And everybody who we talked to said that, oh, this airport is known for that, to the point where they had a special desk called the disruptions desk.
Ooh.
Where
Well,
you could,
I didn't know that because I've never flown there. I've always driven, so that's new to me. It's intriguing. Go on.
and so they were so used to this airport having problems, is you literally would go and they'd give you like a coupon for like a meal.
Yeah.
Because they were so used to it. And everybody who we talked to was like, oh yeah, my flight was delayed. Yeah. And it's like, okay, 1 or 2 flights. Yeah. When you meet the 10th person and they're saying their flight's delayed, that's a problem.
That is a problem. Oh my gosh. Well, no, I've never flown. So I have no idea, but I know a whole bunch of tourists. They're always in Edinburgh, bless them. But for me, I used to live and technically from the Northeast, so we always drive. And I love Glasgow. So it is a bit further for me because I'm on the east, Newcastle. So it's easy to just kind of go up the coast to Edinburgh. But I love Glasgow. So it was so interesting to hear that's where Dorinda's husband, his family, that's where they're from. That's where they were located. So, she'd always go there to visit his side of the family. I loved how she mentioned how colorful they are, fun in comparison to the Londoners. And I wanted to say, Dorinda, it's not just the Scots, it's everyone in the Northeast, in the north of the country, the middle of the country, specifically the north. It's just very different. It's way more laid back.
Yes.
So it's like the experience you have in London for her and just kind of, the high society. It's like when you go up north, where I'm going to say where my people are, up in Newcastle, it's just very working class, very just regular folks, had family live in a low income area called Sunderland, but still, just people are just cool. It's a different life. So it was very interesting to kind of hear her notice the comparison of while it was a bit, gloomy up there, the people were just very colorful. So I appreciated that. Also, that's when she had the idea for her business, because it was always chilly up there. She wanted something nice, and she was saying, well, there were just very few options. If you wanted a cashmere sweater, she was saying either you get something cheap, super thick, but it's shapeless, or you get something that's super expensive, that's thin and very impractical for the weather. So she started using her weekends visiting in Scotland to visit cashmere factories. And her whole business idea kind of, came from that. So when you're mentioning Target earlier and shopping, I was thinking about all the mill houses and the factories up in Scotland that did cashmere. And the fact that, she started her business. And what was the best part of her business is that she approached it from a very basic point of view. Because I want to think I have a business mind. I grew up in a family of business owners. I had my small business. And I thought it was ingenious that she never made set designs, because I was thinking about it. Her husband, Ralph Lynch, he's rich. He has money. Right. He could fund her business ventures. And we'll learn more about Dorinda and finances later in the book. I'm not going to spoil it. But just the fact that she said, you know what, I'm going to do this in a very basic way.
Right.
I'm going to let these women decide what they want to wear. I'm going to give them options to customize. Again, just think about it. In the 90s, again, only a certain class of folk could super customize their outfits, but not to the degree she was doing it. So she had a base cardigan in a variety of styles and colors. And then the customer could choose what buttons they would want, what nuts and bolts and frills and this and that. And Dorinda had a good business. I mean, Princess Diana was a client. Okay.
Yes.
Princess Diana is buying cashmere from Dorinda Lynch. Let that simmer for a second.
Right.
That was wild.
And on many different levels, not only because she was one of the royals, she was known for her fashion.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So if Princess Diana had something on, everyone's going to want to know what she had on. And Dorinda chose a very basic name for her brand too. It was called DCL Cashmere, Dorinda Sincala Lynch. Very basic. And yeah, it just, again, I found her business savvy, her business idea, her business structure, just, it's just so smart. You'll need to read this because I know we talk about all the housewives nowadays and, starting their businesses, but they're starting businesses after the housewife platform, right, or while they're on the platform. This is Dorinda starting a business way before then. A new mom, by the way. Okay, starting a business as a new mom. I thought that was real great. And yeah, so it was very interesting. But at the same time, in this chapter, before it comes to an end, we see Dorinda's marriage kind of plummet downhill. I mean, she mentions maybe staying with Ralph if she wanted more children, and reading that again, was just so super relatable. She says it wasn't a bad breakup. They didn't hate each other. Their lives was just super different. And the only thing they had in common was their daughter. I mean, how did you feel reading that?
Yeah, well, it was definitely sad, but I've been there to an extent. I've been there. Yeah. I think once you get to a certain age, and we've all been there. Yeah. And I do love the fact though that the part that stuck out to me with that part was when she was going to go to this party, and she'd been invited before they announced their divorce.
Yeah.
But and they were actually separated because it turns out that they stayed legally married for 6 years. Yeah. And the only reason why she got a divorce was because she's marrying Richard. Yeah. And so the part where she got disinvited to a party.
Listen, when she said, and this is true, Londoners do plan events in advance, and she RSVP'd, and then when the friend heard she was disinvited, and she felt like a woman scorned. She knew, I think for her, that was also kind of the realization that she needed to go home.
Right.
I think also for her, she also admits her decision to go home was very rushed, but she also understood, staying just would not be good for her, and her whole life would change. But I just want to point out this fact. Dorinda, every time something major happens, because earlier in the book, something big happened in New York. She made a bad decision. And I remember not spoiling it on the podcast. I said, I wanted you all to read the book and see what Dorinda did. What was her bad decision? And she ended up going back home to lick her wounds. Her parents were non-judgmental. I remember us talking about it and saying, oh, how cool her parents are, because my parents wouldn't let me live down that mistake in that moment, and they probably wouldn't live it down now either. They'd still be talking about it. But that's what Dorinda did. When her marriage went to shit, she got disinvited. She also realized that no matter what she did, it just wouldn't change anything, and she didn't want to stay. She went back home, and she's noticed that every time she went through a major life change, she would go back home to her parents. And I think that's cool that Dorinda had that support system with her parents. So after the divorce, some people would hide. I know I did. After my first divorce, I went into a shell. I didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to talk to anyone, not even my own family. I didn't want to deal with it. But I loved reading that Dorinda had, she had that support system. And she also said she felt guilty not consulting with Ralph. But the good news is Ralph moved right after Dorinda left.
And they were basically best friends.
I know, it's so crazy. And what was funny was Dorinda sharing. So this was what was funny for me. When Dorinda came back to New York, and her daughter was invited to a birthday party, and she got her all dressed up. I remember she said it was like a cute red outfit, tights, nice shoes, headband. She was just so cute. And then when they showed up to the party, it was in a gym area. And then the party had pizza, like any kids' party. And I was thinking Jackie from New Jersey getting pizza and ice cream. So just imagine Dorinda's daughter dressed to the nines. I would say she's dressed for a wedding. That's the best description there. So just imagine a child dressed for a wedding, but they're going to Jackie Goldschneider from New Jersey's kids' party, where it's box pizza and ice cream and cake. That was the equivalent of the party Dorinda took Hannah to. That was the very first party. And she said she looked over at Hannah and she was just standing over there in the sidelines, and, she was very standoffish. So Dorinda goes over to her and say, hey, baby, what's wrong? Go eat, go play with the kids. And she's like, I'm waiting for the cutlery. I died. I died. So Dorinda also had that culture shock in that she raised her daughter, right, in London. And the way they are raised, it's super different.
I could relate to that.
Yes.
100%, because Dorinda also talked about, she said when this was going on, like she felt like an outsider in America. And I, when I was a little kid, I lived in the States, then we moved overseas, lived there for years, I didn't move back to the States until I was like an adult, till I was like 21. And when I moved back I was like, what in the hell is this?
It's huge culture shock. It's huge. And for me, it was super relatable, because my eldest was 6, going on 6, because the baby was like 3. Yeah, so my eldest was 6 when we moved to the States and we're spending real quality time here, and it was huge culture shock. It was huge culture shock. So I could relate to that. I don't remember how old Dorinda said Hannah was, but I understand just the kind of, standoffish kind of behavior, because they don't know how to navigate this. Whereas, again, I know not all Americans are the same, but it's like the experience we had where they were just very opinionated and loud and just, it was like word vomit, whereas we're just sitting there or, quiet, silent, just listening, because it's just so much. It's like, it's a difference between being in church and then going to a carnival. That's how different it is. Okay. It's like church and you're sitting there and, you're going through the motions and the rituals, and it's just very ritualistic, very protocol-y, very traditional. And then you just go into a carnival where it's just a free for all. And there's so many different things going on at the same time. And so in that moment, that was just very relatable. And to your point, she never divorced she didn't divorce Ralph till it was time to marry Richard. And even though that happened, they were still close. And what was very funny was when she was talking about dating. Ooh, and also she credits herself for Ralph's marriage. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because she kind of, it was a joke, but she's kind of basically saying he wouldn't have met his wife had he not come back to New York, and there was some event or something going on. But anyway, Dorinda credits the wonderful woman that her ex-husband is married to herself. It was also interesting because I kind of feel like I'm going through this stage in my life when Dorinda talks about balancing being a mom, socializing, and wanting to go back to work. Because I don't care where you are in the parenting game, just being responsible for another human is wild.
Yes,
It's
I
so
know.
hard. Yeah, I don't care where you are in the parenting game. It's hard.
And I'm new.
Right? And you're really thrust into it. And it's hard. It's again, whether you have a newborn, whether you have someone who's 10, 15, it's crazy. So reading Dorinda wanting to find that transition. It's one thing with her dating, because like she said, she didn't want to just date just to date. But then also just kind of hearing her wanting to have a career. And for her, she became a real estate agent.
Yes, which
and
I could totally see.
I can see her doing that. I loved reading about that. And again, not going to spoil it for folks, but her being a real estate agent is how she met Richard Medley. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. And chapter 5 ends with Dorinda accidentally ending up on a date with Richard, even though she didn't say yes to the date, but runs into him anyway, but then agrees to go on another date. And that's it. And that's all I must say. So it was just very interesting reading about her story with Hannah, because that's what chapter 5 is. It starts with her birth of Hannah, adjusting as a new mom, her business with Kashmir and everything back in the UK, then seeing her marriage disintegrate with Richard, but they were still great friends. They co-parented very well. I personally believe they are co-parenting goals. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They are co-parenting goals, because it's very hard balancing that. And as someone who has a blended family, because my husband did have a child prior to us getting together and having kids, that shit ain't easy. That's all I must say. Because you're juggling different personalities, and his daughter's mom, his ex-wife, she remarried. And while we're cool now, it was always very hard, because you also don't want to be a parent to another child because they have a parent, and it's straddling that line. And then also, even when they're coming into your space, because I think about what it's like for them, it's super hard and difficult. So all I'll say is I know it's rocky at times, but it's clear when it came to their daughter, Dorinda and Ralph made it work. Their spouses helped to make it work. And that was very admirable. But then we get to chapter 6, which is my favorite chapter. So while it was super nice reading about how Dorinda met Ralph Lynch, and that's chapter 4, being Mrs. Lynch, chapter 6 is entitled Becoming Mrs. Medley. And for me, this was my favorite, reading about Richard, because I believe 100%, and now I understand why Dorinda reacted the way she did and the way she went off the walls, is because reading this chapter, I understood the kind of relationship she had with Richard.
Right. Exactly.
It explained so much to me, because I'm on my second marriage too, and Richard is her second. And I'm convinced that my husband is my Richard, my equivalent of her Richard. Like, there's so many things she talked about. My husband ain't rich though, y'all. Disclaimer, he ain't rich. But just the way they connected, for me, that I felt it through the book. I felt Dorinda poured into this chapter, you guys. I mean, she did about what's his name? Ralph. But this section, they're two R names, Les. I keep confusing Ralph and Richard. But anyway, Richard's the last husband. It's Richard Medley. And their first date was at Tao.
Which I've been to.
That's what I was just going to say. I've never been to Tao.
I've been to. I've been there.
Do tell.
And
sorry. I was going to say, apparently there's a big old Buddha, and the closer you are to Buddha, the higher you are on the social ladder. I died reading that.
And they were next to Buddha.
They were next to Buddha, so that means, Richard, yes.
Well, he invited her to the Met Gala.
That too. After Tao, he invited her to the Met Gala. And what I will say that Dorinda said, and I flagged this because, again, I found this part so relatable. And I'm like, Dorinda, I see you, I feel you. When she said, no matter where you were with Richard, he had a way of making you feel like you were the center of the universe. And I'm like, of course, and she goes on to talk about just their connection. And he invited her to the Met Gala. And it was so funny because she was saying within seconds of him inviting her, dresses showed up at her apartment. And she was like, hey, wait, and she called him about it. And I love that because that's so Dorinda, to call him out on, hey, what are you trying to say? I don't know how to dress. I'm not going to dress appropriately for the thing. And she herself said that her calling him out on sending over dresses for her was a test. She said that phone call was a test. And y'all know in the early parts of a relationship, you say shit, you ask questions in a weird way to see where this person's temperature was. And she's like, do you not trust me? Do you think I'll wear jeans to the Met Gala? And she said it was a test. And she said, if Richard was an asshole, he would have dumped her right then and there. I had to think about it. It's true, but if he wasn't an asshole, he would have said something else. And he ended up saying, I thought it would be a nice gesture, but I don't care what you wear. I just want to spend the evening with you. That, my friends, is the right answer. So if you're out there dating, that is the right answer.
And then the next line was the line that I flagged when she said, I wore Alexander McQueen made by Alexander McQueen.
Yes, I have it flagged too. I died. I'm like, okay, Dorinda.
So she seriously must be like loaded beyond loaded.
But also, point of information, readers. Here I go messing the name up again. Ralph Lynch was in banking. He had a lot of money, no doubt about it. However, I always will feel the need to point out when a woman has her own money, because again, remember, she started her cashmere company.
Right.
She had clients like Princess Diana, not just because she's royal, but she's fashionable. She had all the A-list folks in the UK on her client list, in Europe on her client list, and she sold that business when she moved back to America. Uh-huh. So even without her divorce settlement, which by the way, she never divorced Richard, Ralph, here I go again. Ralph. She never divorced her first husband, Ralph, at this moment. She does allude to the fact that Ralph was paying for her apartment and he was, helping take care of Hannah. However, Dorinda's all about her own money, you guys. And you know what? I have a lot of respect for Dorinda about money, and we'll figure that out in later chapters, although no, I think it's mentioned in this chapter where she gives a joke about money. But Dorinda had her own money from the sale. And again, she just started doing real estate as well. So Dorinda isn't the kind of woman who's just going to sit there and collect money. She wants to have her own money. But to your point, Les, Alexander McQueen, by Alexander McQueen, I flagged that. That blew my mind. But also right next to that is another reason Richard was the one. She said all night, Richard kept checking the time to make sure she wouldn't be late for Hannah's babysitter. Now, she said something about the babysitter earlier, which I intentionally ignored because I wanted it's part of her first date, not a real date story with Richard. But she was saying that was evidence he truly understood her life, that she is a mom, right? And he wanted to be a solid part of that. So, more dating advice from Dorinda here, because she gave good dating advice earlier in the book. And now she's alluding to the fact she knew Richard was the one because he cared about her getting home at the time, the babysitter, to relieve the babysitter or to meet the babysitter or whatever. So for folks out there with kids, if the person is not watching their watch about your babysitter, that person is not for you. You need to find you someone who is mindful of the babysitter and your child's time. So I love that.
And you know, I like the fact that, you know, it basically, you know, he had kids too, it turned out.
Yes.
And
yes.
so they blended their family, but then with the blended family, it wasn't only her kid and his kid, it was her kid, his kid, her ex-husband and his wife.
And their family.
And their families. And so everybody's entire family was blended.
100%. I also love the fact, because I know, again, because I've had friends who are single moms and dating. She said after 3 months, Richard met Hannah and they hit it off. So that was great to read. And to your point, Ralph also loved Richard. They met many times. That, you know, they were a big part. They bonded over philosophy, you know, Hannah and all these different stuff, her daughter too. And she said, there was never a sense of jealousy or competition. They both recognized their roles. And I feel like that's where things break apart sometimes in blended families. Again, I have a blended family too. It's a competition sometimes. Not saying it's always the case, but yeah. So just to see that. And also, she kind of felt like Richard, Ralph, and Hannah had their own little club of 3.
Right.
You know, and she's like an outsider looking in. So it was very nice to see that. And to your point, Dorinda didn't divorce Richard until it was time to marry Ralph. And when the papers came through, they decided to tie the knot. And I love this because she just called a minister and they got married in their living room, you guys. They had a very basic first wedding. And I'm all for that, you know, because sometimes, you know, that's the best thing for folks. You know, I did that with my my now husband, you know, just very little simple. And then we had a party later on with family.
It's exactly what I did.
See, for me, it's, you know, again, people do what works for you. But for me, that worked because also, you know, I had different priorities. I didn't want to go spending a whole bunch of money on a wedding. You know, and we had other things we wanted to achieve, you know, the basics, you know, home, car, this, moving. And we were moving a lot at the time. So that wasn't a priority. But what I loved reading was Dorinda's description of their wedding, because we already got her first wedding's description. Dorinda went all out. You know, she had a water theme. They got married at the Brick Church, which I'm assuming is an institution in New York. Richard, she said, was actually a deacon there, which was very interesting. It's a Presbyterian church, which she said was a lot more relaxed than Catholic church, because she's Catholic. She said for her dress, for people who care about details, she wore an elegant custom-made gown in champagne silk. She held the reception and dinner at the Grill in the iconic Seagram building in New York City. And they transformed it into a waterland because she's saying her theme was water. So she had an enormous enormous aquarium. She had projections of fish, this with fish, the glass bowls on table with fish. So it's clear, water and fish. So it's clear, you know, water was a big thing. And she goes into other details, which I'm not going to spoil, but here I go again with the Richard points, because it hit me. So she said, Richard stopped during the dinner and gave a speech that ended with him saying, "You are my due north, always there to guide me. No matter how stormy it gets, I look to my due north." And so it's just very interesting hearing about him. Also his background, he was very normal, very middle class, kind of like her parents. Because remember, like her dad worked, her mom stayed home, took care of the family. Well, his family, they grew up outside Columbus, Ohio, she said. His dad was a train conductor. His mom was also stay at home. So he too kind of worked the old fashioned way. You know, he came up the old fashioned way. He was a veteran, which I loved. You know, he was in the Air Force. He went to school on the GI Bill, which again is an amazing opportunity.
Right. My dad did that, so I get that.
Right. My husband joined the military as well. He had no options. He had zero options. He's from a single mom household, so it was even worse. And yeah, the career he has now, he says it every day. Had I not joined the military, had I not kind of learned this structure and just, you know, a lot of life values, work ethic,
Right.
again, structure and everything, the opportunity to go to school after the fact. So he too is a similar story. But Richard went to Yale for graduate school. He earned a PhD in philosophy. He worked as a democratic speechwriter, a consultant for George Soros, and then he started his own company, Medley Global Advisors. So it was just very nice to just hear a wholesome, normal, you know, background, no silver or gold spoon, nothing, just, you know, regular people who decided to do a thing and, you know, they made it. So it was very interesting reading about Richard and the kind of work he did. Dorinda goes into that in great detail.
Right. Yeah. A lot of detail.
I love the detail. I'm here for detail. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but what I also loved, and another thing I flagged, was that he treated everyone the same way.
Right.
Because I have it flagged. He treated Henry Kissinger in the same way he treated the valet guy. And he was just, you know, normal to everyone. And he would say, everyone has a lesson to teach you. And that's something I believe wholeheartedly. So it was very nice to hear that. And what was interesting, fun fact, you guys, she said at some point, a few years into her relationship with Richard, she was asked to be a housewife.
Yes, I found that interesting too. And I think that if that would have been a whole other, like it would have been a whole different vibe on that show if she like started out, like if it was her and Jill together, you know.
Had Dorinda joined Housewives season 1, we would get a totally different Dorinda.
Yeah.
And she proves that further on in the chapter. And when I get to that point, I'll point it out, but we would have received a different Dorinda. That's
she would have been happy. She would have been like happy. I don't know if she'd drink so much.
She wouldn't drink so much. She'd be a lot more reserved and she'd be a lot happier. Yeah. Because again, reading this chapter explains so much with Dorinda. But I wanted to point out, she was invited to be a housewife. She declined it. She mentions knowing the women from the show because they traveled in the same circles. It's funny because she said Richard wanted her to do it. Richard wanted her to do the show, and she said no. She didn't want to be on television in that moment. She didn't want to add anything new to her life. You know, she had a great life. And see, that's the thing. I can relate to having something so good. You don't want to add anything else to the plate. You don't want to overdo it. You just want to live.
He sounds like he would have been a really good house husband.
I think he would have been. Listen,
like he would have been good on the show.
Stuff I'm reading about this man, I'm like, he would have been perfect for the show. And it was just nice to hear all the circles he moved in. You know, Richard, he was like the guy. Political circles, actors, singers, all kinds of people. Like I said, you know, she hosted a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. They were in her home. Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Nora Jones, like Kennedys. You know, they were very well known. And this is the funny part now. So this is when Dorinda is really getting personal outside of the connections they had and everything they did in the public eye. We see Dorinda on Housewives as super fun and wild, right? However, she says Richard was more fun than she was. So again, just imagine had we had this man on television. If Dorinda is saying this man was way more fun than her, she was like sometimes too fun. She had to be the strict person. She said, and I love this part. She would say, Richard was so fun, it made her the police officer. Richard was Disney and she was the IRS. Like, I die.
Wow, I know.
I die.
She's pretty fun. She's pretty fun.
She was saying, this is how cool they were. He said, Richard would take the kids to Kmart Okay, y'all remember Kmart? I remember Kmart. When I used to visit America, even before I was living here full time, always go to Kmart to get the kids' stuff. And Dorinda said, he used to take the kids there like it was Bergdorf Goodman. They called it the Great Kmart Adventure. All the employees at the Kmart knew him. The manager would come out and say, hello, Mr. Medley, how many carts would you be needing? Like, this man is like shopping down Kmart. And what was Dorinda's response to this? Stop spending so much money at Kmart. He was always going over the top. They're saying some adventures were lavish, obviously. These are folks of means. But so, for example, she said, he booked a boat to take the family around the Bahamas. They've been to Europe, the Maldives. They flew in private planes. But at the same time, he did other fun things and he always had a sense of giving and gratitude she tried to pass on to the kids. Right. And I just loved how he would dress up in silly costumes and, do wacky things. And it was just so fun.
Now, the thing is, though, so I think part of the reason why she was acting the way that she was acting is, he ended up getting sick, and it was like a sudden, like, just bam, bam, boom. There was no lead up. Yeah. So that's the wild part. I mean, so here's the thing. Now I also understand why when we got her the last season we had her, she was crazy, because she also talks about the Bluestone Manor. Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, that's right. The origin, the origin story of Bluestone Manor. That's right.
He bought Bluestone Manor for her. She gives us all the details about the manor. I'm not going to go into it. She talks about how they did the decor, and it's something they did together. Like, they were working on this house for 2 to 3 years. She describes the style, the vibe, to be Frankenstein meets Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And yeah, here it is. She said renovations took 3 years. And once they were done, they moved in and they were enjoying the home. And she said the days were full. They had a great time. They loved it. But the years passed by so quickly. And then it gets to Richard's decline. And that was just kind of so hard for me. But now it makes sense. The house flooded.
Right.
She lost everything. For Dorinda, it's one thing to buy all the shit you have. Like, again, money's not the problem here. The problem here is all the memories and everything they did together and just everything that was attached to it. Right. And she talks about how Richard started to change.
Yeah.
Started losing weight. He was getting dull. The gusto he would have telling stories and just being it changed.
Yeah.
And she talks about him not wanting to go to the hospital. And she talks about his skin yellowing. And the second I heard that, I knew it was jaundice. Not because of my healthcare background, but because I lived that experience with my paternal grandfather. And it's like trying to get him to go to the hospital. He didn't go. He went to the doctor. He would hide whatever. What do you call those things? Scripts. What do you call scripts? Prescriptions or.
Oh, he would hide them, really?
Oh my God, yeah. We found a whole load of shit in his car when he got admitted. But I felt the same vibe from Richard, right? Mm-hmm. And they had to, and Richard was insistent he didn't want to go to the doctor. I felt like he didn't want to know. And I got that same vibe from my granddad. He didn't want to go. So what happened is Richard said to Dorinda, bring me to Bluestone Manor. Let's hang out. After we hang out there, because they were in New York, he'd go to the hospital. And the second he got there, it just became a domino effect, and it just kept going. And every minute it was something, and surgery and this and that. And, Dorinda really gets into details about it. And another thing that I found super relatable was just her saying she was at home and she had a feeling. And I know that feeling she was talking about. She's like, I had this feeling and we had to get dressed, her and Hannah, and go to the hospital. And she went there. And that was the best they had of Richard. And I remember when my granddad was passing, it was like the day before he passed. It was so funny. Everyone made it there except me. So I have that regret. And because I was there the Tuesday, everyone went there the Wednesday, and he passed the Thursday. And the Wednesday when they went there, it was the best of him. Everyone was talking about it and him saying, oh, he's coming home and all these different things. So when Hannah and Dorinda went there in the middle of the night, when they had that feeling, they had the best of Richard. It was like he was awake, he was alert and everything. And even Hannah was saying, oh, wow, you know, Mom, you just knew it was, you know, and we went and all that. And side note, Dorinda also shares what Hannah was going through. And that too was very relatable, which I won't go into. But I think the hardest part for Dorinda was the next morning. So after they had that high, you guys, which is why for me, again, Dorinda just became even more relatable. After that high, she got the call about him having another bleed. And they had two options. They could do surgery, or they could just give him a whole bunch of meds, you know, shoot him up with morphine and just let him go.
Yeah, or as they called it, a morphine-induced coma.
That, yes. And because she was his, you know, caregiver, she had power of attorney, she was the one who was making the decision. She had to make that decision. And y'all, I'm gonna be real. I'm getting up in age, and it was so funny because I was talking earlier not earlier, I think it was a couple of days ago. I was talking to Brandon and Dr. Monica and them and Stephanie, and I was saying, do you know that feeling when you realize you've gotten older, meaning you interact with your family and you realize they're getting to that age, or you have a spouse and you might have a flash of thought in your mind like, what if? I wouldn't want to be Dorinda in that moment. I know a lot of these decisions are inevitable for folks. I know there are folks out there probably listening who've had to make those decisions for family and loved ones. I didn't want to be Dorinda in that moment. I did not want to be Dorinda in that moment. And what was wild was her saying she made the decision. She didn't want him to die in surgery or go through surgery again, which isn't going to help him at this point. So decided to reject the surgery and just, you know, let him be. And she describes how he passed, you guys, in great detail. And then he was gone. And the realest thing Dorinda has said was, and again, God, this book is so good. She's like, you don't feel what you think you're going to feel in those first hours. As horrible as this may sound, and as guilty as it may make me feel on some level, I think I was relieved.
Yeah, well,
that was the most honest fucking thing she said. I mean, she's been real in this book throughout, I believe, in my opinion. From her talking about Hannah and being a new mom, and just, you know, how wacko she was in those early, you know, I felt she was very honest about motherhood. She was very honest about her pregnancy and not being glamorous and all these different things. And then now to read about how she handled Richard's passing, I'm like, that's the realest thing she ever said. And she admits she had dropped weight. She was 106 pounds. Her hair was falling out. She hadn't slept for months. Hannah had spent the past few months pretending like everything was okay. But in that moment, there was nothing left. And that's exactly what was left. That was nothing. And then the chapter ends with her talking about Hannah and her falling asleep and, you know, having pizza in bed, then falling asleep. And then it hit her. And then it really hit her that he had passed, and she had started to cry. And
and I like the way that, like, she described like the actual death. And without giving it away, it wasn't what you think. There was no like profound, like it just happened.
You know, I think people have this misconception about death, you know, like sometimes what the last words are and stuff like that. And, you know, and just people having, again, those profound moments. So there's this like London, I'm going to call her celebrity because I think she's a celebrity. This London celebrity, she's just like a local celebrity.
Right.
She lives in Tottenham, which is a big, there's a big Jamaican community there, and she's Jamaican and she's very real. She's very real. And her daughter had cancer and her daughter passed. And she did an Instagram video and they were talking about it. Even local radio in Jamaica was talking about it because, like, again, she's like a local Jamaican community celebrity, and she was away traveling and she made it back home, and her daughter, everyone was saying it's like her daughter was waiting on her, and the last words she said, her daughter said, was, "Mom, I'm sorry."
Wow.
Mom, I'm sorry. And she's going through her grief now. Like, this is very fresh. Not even a month now. And, you know, for some folks, it's that. For some folks, it's, I love you, and this and that. And sometimes it's some great epiphany. Right. And other times it's the way Dorinda described it. And the way Dorinda described it is the way my dad described his father, my granddad, who I've been talking about, his passing. So in a way, like, my dad didn't get anything profound. It happened. You know, we were in, I was in school, but yeah, it's just, for me, I know we're 6, we just finished chapter 6.
Yeah.
And we have 7, 8, and 9 to go. But you guys, I think Dorinda has just been so very honest and real, and she holds nothing back. It's like, I felt nothing. I was there in that room with her, with Hannah, with her first husband, by the way, who was there. Yeah. Her first husband, Ralph, was there when Richard was dying. That's how close these folks are. But Dorinda holds nothing back. It was very real. It wasn't profound. It just happened. And her immediate reaction of relief, and then it dawning on her, okay, this is real, and her having her breakdown moment at home with her daughter. And I'm sure she was grieving days, weeks, months, and it probably will be years for her after that fact.
I'm sure she still is.
I think part of her therapy, you know, how folks will say writing is cathartic. I feel a lot of emotion in this book, Les. I feel so much emotion. I hope Dorinda has been putting down some of her feelings, burdens, and thoughts in this book, because I get emotional. I don't cry. I'm not a crier like that. But when I do cry, I cry. But I'm not a crier. And I've been feeling so much emotion. I haven't cried. I've been feeling a lot of emotion in this book. Right. And of all the Housewives books, I think if I was going to cry, it would be this one. And it's weird.
Well, you know, that's how you're supposed to write a book, Erica Jane.
I swear, her book, you know, when I tell folks her book was bad, and they're like, oh, you just don't like Erica. I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with the fact I don't like Erica, because I've been defending Erica in these clubhouse streets, telling people to give her grace. But her book was bad. It was really bad.
And by the way, I like Danielle Staub's book. So there you go.
True. There you go. See what I mean? But Dorinda, I think, is setting the standard for books. Karen Huger, I want a book from you.
Yes, I still want a book.
Read Dorinda's book. This is a good guide. Erica Jane, in a couple of years, when you're going to do your tell-all story.
From jail.
She's going to do a tell-all story, and I'm going to read it. But she has to read Dorinda's book first. I'm just going to say it. Housewives out there, you need to read Dorinda's book, because she is doing it well. And I'm loving the reading experience so far.
Yes. Well, that is it for today. And I've got to mention this because I keep on forgetting to mention this. We have a Patreon. And, you know, I get it. You know, times are tough. But if you have a couple of extra bucks, throw it in the Patreon. I'm in the process of revamping it and coming up with some different perks for some different tiers. So that's going to be happening by the end of the month. And we also have a Facebook page, the Reality Reading Rainbow on Facebook. So join that Facebook page. Oh, and we actually now have an Instagram, the Reality Reading Rainbow on Instagram. So join us however you want. Like I said, and like I always say, we take listener recommendations. The next book has already been picked out because the next book that we're going to be reading is from a friend of ours, Dave Quinn. So it's called It's Not All Diamonds and Rosé. So pre-order. You can pre-order it on Amazon. So that's our next book. So that's already picked. But the book after that is not. So some of the best books that I've read on this podcast were listener recommendations. House of Hilton, which is my favorite book, was a listener recommendation. So, and I had to like search for it. I couldn't, it's not in print anymore. I had to find it on a Kindle.
Wow.
And it turned out to be the best. I think it was like best $14 I've ever read.
Well, I'm really interested to read Dave's book again. It is entitled Not All Diamonds and Rosé, the inside story of the Real Housewives from the people who lived it. It's by Dave Quinn. Sorry. Books go on sale October 19th. So after then, you won't have to pre-order. You'll just order it. It'll show up at your door. And, Les, I'm really excited because he spoke to housewives, producers, execs. I mean, even Andy's on the record, which is wild.
I wonder if Dave's going to be on Watch What Happens Live.
See, now that would be something.
I would love that.
I think they should. And, it's a Bravo approved, Andy approved, everybody approved book. Okay, this isn't some random writing a book, which, by the way, if you're random, you are allowed.
Yeah.
However,
if it's good.
Exactly. However, this is authorized. You know how they say authorized biography of super fancy rich people? Well, this is an authorized book by the network, by Andy himself. And I really want to read. I want to see, I want to get answers from these housewives to see how they feel after the show, because I'm very interested to hear about their experiences. I love reading about Dorinda's experience preparing for Housewives, but also just to kind of get some behind the scene takes from producers as well as network executives, as well as Andy, because Housewives has evolved over the years. So again, and the book includes photographs, and I love me some photographs. I love me some photographs. So again, It's Not All Diamonds and Rosé by Dave Quinn.
Great. And I guess that's it.
I think that's it.
Until next time, keep reading.
Happy reading. Bye.